Memory 6. The Panopil Mountains were nice enough if one liked mountains. The bird migration was interesting enough if one liked birds. Haplif liked neither, and was getting damn tired of having to put up with them. "There's just so little here that can take you to your future," he reminded Yopanek as he poured the boy another drink. "Bird migrations are for those who prefer the stillness of the past. Your path lies forward, toward the excitement of honor and recognition." "I can't disagree," Yopanek said, taking a sip from his cup. "You understand me, Haplif, better even than Yomi does. But my path also includes my betrothed, and this is where she's happy." Of course," Haplif said, brushing his fingertips across the side of Yopanek's head as he pretended to push back a stray strand of hair. The boy's feelings for Yomi were still there, unfortunately, but they seemed weaker now than they'd been when he'd first met the couple. Maybe the seeds of discontent he'd been planting were finally starting to take root. "You've certainly done all you can to make her happy," he continued, "but does giving her short-term happiness require you to give up your long-term hopes and dreams?" "I haven't given them up," Yopanek said stubbornly. "They're just postponed." "Perhaps," Haplif said, putting some darkness into his tone. "But the Agbui have a saying, an opportunity postponed is an opportunity lost. Who knows whether or not Counselor Lakoviv will be available to speak to you in a month, or in 2 months, or in 3. Who knows if he'll be available in 2 weeks, Yopanek countered. "Even if we left today," he broke off, staring into his cup. "Look, Haplif, if you say that Lakoviv is the one to see, I believe you. But he isn't the only Sodlak counselor in the Ascendancy, or even on Selwys. If we can't see him, maybe someone else will do." Haplif curled his fingers in frustration. Maybe someone else would work for Yopanek, but no one else would work for him. "But Counselor Lakoviv is the only one whose land is suitable for our spice harvests," he said. "He and Red Hill Province are where our 2 desires and needs coincide." "I'd forgotten that," Yopanek admitted. "But right now, the Panopils are where Yomi's desires and needs coincide." And they were back where they'd started. "All I'm asking is that you talk to her," Haplif said. "There are surely bird migrations everywhere, even on Selwys." "I can try," Yopanek said doubtfully, "but I make no promises." "I ask none," Haplif said. Damn the boy and his utter spinelessness. "Thank you, and sleep well. You'll be heading out early tomorrow as usual?" "Yes," Yopanek said, setting down his cup and moving to the hatch. "We'll try not to wake anyone when we leave. Good night, Haplif." "Good night." For a few minutes, Haplif sat motionless, thinking and brooding. The Panopil migration was smaller, less concentrated, and therefore less interesting than the one Shimkif had so artfully disrupted. The contrast was strong enough that he'd hoped Yomi would quickly tire of it and be ready to move on. But they were now in their 4th day, and the girl was still going strong. Either she was genuinely excited despite the tameness of the event, or she was just too stubborn to admit she'd been wrong. Or else this was some kind of power game she was deliberately playing against Haplif. He muttered a curse. Her cloud journal drawings might hold some clues to that, but he'd searched her room thoroughly during the past 2 days without finding them. Clearly she'd taken to carrying the pages with her when she and Yopanek headed out to watch the birds. In the meantime, Jixtus's deadline was ticking ever closer. Haplif stared at the far wall, mentally running the numbers again. If they got out of here in the next 3 or 4 days, they could easily manage the rendezvous with Jixtus and the new navigator he'd promised. 5 days would be marginal, 6 would be impossible. None of which meant disaster for the mission, of course. Long experience in these things had taught Haplif to build a margin for error into his plans and timelines. But making Jixtus wait at the rendezvous would be a bad idea. Yopanek had promised to talk to Yomi, but at this point, Haplif's best hope was Shimkif. Once again, she'd slipped out shortly after their arrival and hadn't been seen since. Hopefully, this migration was also about to come to an abrupt end. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Yopanek and Yomi left the ship just before sunrise with all their bird-watching gear. 2 hours later, they unexpectedly returned, but not in the same shape as they'd left. Yomi was nearly unconscious. Yopanek was drenched in sweat as he half-carried, half-dragged her alongside him. "I don't know what's wrong," Yopanek panted as the two Agbui who'd hurried out at his plaintive call carried Yomi to her room. The Chiss girl's eyes were unfocused. Haplif saw as they passed him, her breathing labored. She said she wasn't feeling well, and we started back. Halfway down the path, she suddenly became too weak to walk. "You should have called," Haplif said, taking the boy's arm and leading him into the ship behind the others. Yopanek made as if to follow Yomi. Haplif turned him instead to the salon and sat him down in one of the chairs. "We would have come to help you." "We couldn't," Yopanek said. He was on the edge of exhaustion, Haplif could see, his legs wobbling from the grueling task of getting his betrothed back to the ship. "Comm emissions confuse the birds, so that whole area is under a suppression blanket." "I see," Haplif said, pouring him a drink. "Was Yomi's sudden illness pure coincidence? Or was it Shimkif's doing?" "We need to call a doctor. Our medical knowledge of your people is very limited." "An emergency team is on the way," Yopanek said, drinking deeply and handing the cup back for a refill. "I waited to call until we were in sight of the ship so I could tell them where to come." Haplif frowned. "Did you think we might have left?" Yopanek gave a little shrug. "I don't know. The way you talked last night, you need to do what's right for you and your people. I understand that." "That may be," Haplif said, "but we would never leave our companions. Certainly not without talking about it." "Haplif?" Someone called from the corridor. "The Chiss medics are here." "Show them to Yomi's room," Haplif said, standing up and offering Yopanek a helping hand. "Come." "A green stripe?" Yomi asked weakly from her bed, frowning up at Yopanek and Haplif. "But I never felt a sting or even a bite." "You wouldn't have," Yopanek said, his hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder. "The medics said they're one of the few venomous insects that don't bite or sting. They spit their venom onto the skin to be absorbed into the rest of the body. The ones here in the mountains have to defend against bigger animals, so their toxin is particularly nasty." "First the grand migration, now this," Yomi murmured. "I don't seem to be having much luck these days." "The good news is that now that you've been exposed, the antitoxins in your body will make sure you won't ever have another reaction this extreme," Yopanek went on. "Even better, you should be pretty much recovered in a day or two." "So are we heading for Selwys now?" Yomi asked, a hint of resignation in her voice. Haplif and Yopanek exchanged looks. "I thought you wanted to stay here and watch the migration," Yopanek said. "I thought you wanted to go to Selwys," Yomi countered. "We can discuss all that later," Haplif put in quickly. The last thing he wanted was to have Yomi making demands when Yopanek's emotions were all tangled up in her illness. "Right now, as Yopanek said, you need rest." "All right," Yomi said, closing her eyes. "We'll talk tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Yopanek promised, squeezing her hand once and then turning to the hat. "I couldn't find a way to disrupt the migration this time," she said, sinking into a chair and taking the drink Haplif handed her. "So I did the next best thing and disrupted her. Hopefully, that will be the end of it." "Maybe," Haplif said doubtfully. "We'll see what she has to say in the morning." "You don't understand," Shimkif said. "I dropped in on her before coming in here. You know how twitchy she is about being touched? Well, not right now she isn't." Haplif crinkled his forehead skin. "You realize readings taken while the subject is asleep aren't reliable." "Ah, but she wasn't asleep," Shimkif said. "That's the point. She was a little dozy, but conscious. It turns out we were wrong." She considered. "Or I was, anyway. See, she doesn't want Yopanek to give up all his hopes and dreams for her. She just wants him to be willing to give them up. Once she's satisfied that he would do that for her, he can go charging onto fame and fortune on Selwys, and she'll stand by smiling and being all proud of him." "That's great," Haplif said, sifting rapidly through the possibilities. If he could maneuver Yopanek into making that commitment clear to her, they could be out of here by tomorrow. "Maybe it's great," Shimkif cautioned. "The problem is that we don't know what it'll take to persuade her. Theoretically, Yopanek should be the best source of information, but to be honest, I'm not convinced he knows his betrothed any better than we do." "Maybe I can get something from him in the morning," Haplif said, "or maybe from her." "Just be careful not to push them," Shimkif said, draining her drink. "The girl especially. She's smarter than she seems. I'll guarantee you that. If she even suspects we're trying to slip something past her, she'll pull them both out so fast you'll wonder if they need a navigator for the trip. I'll be careful, Haplif promised. Go get some rest. With luck, tomorrow, or the day after at the latest, we'll be off this miserable planet. Yomi was sitting up in bed, working with her questies, when Haplif arrived. "Good morning," he said cheerfully as he stepped into the compartment. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," she said, looking at him over the top of the questies. "I was just reading up on green stripes. It says they almost never attack Chiss." "That's what the medics said too," Haplif agreed. "They told us attacks are rare, but they happen a couple of times a year." He smiled as he stepped closer. "That means you're 1 in a million, which of course we've always known. Where's Yopanek?" "I sent him to the viewing grounds," Yomi said, still eyeing him. "No sense both of us missing out on the day." She lowered her gaze, focusing again on the questus. "I was searching for other migrations on Shihan. Turns out there are more than I realized." "Interesting," Haplif said, taking a final step to put himself beside her bed. "Maybe after we've visited Kelwis we can come back and watch 1 or 2 of them." "Maybe." Yomi closed her eyes and stretched back, as if adjusting her spine and neck. Haplif reached forward and brushed her head with his fingertips. Hatred. He jerked the hand away, the unexpected flash of emotion nearly knocking him back off his feet. He blinked away the sensation and looked back at Yomi. To find her staring hard at him, the hatred and revulsion he'd just felt now plastered across her face. And there was something else there, too. Understanding and a bitter-edged validation. "I knew it," she said, her voice digging into Haplif like shards of broken ceramic. "I knew it. You're telepathic. You're all telepathic." "I don't know what you're talking about," Haplif insisted, but the words were pure reflex and far, far too late. Her little trap had nailed him, all right. Nailed him right to the deck. "You've been manipulating us ever since we met, haven't you?" she accused, ignoring his protest. "Making us jump to your music, leading us by the nose." Her face— "I don't know what you're talking about," Haplif repeated. "Yomi, this is the toxin talking. You're not well. You're—" "And who made me that way?" Yomi snapped. "Who poisoned—" She broke off, her eyes going wide. "The Grand Migration. Did you poison that too?" Yomi— "Never mind," she said, dropping the questies onto her lap and snagging her comm from the side table. "No more lies. As soon as I tell Yoponek." And with that, of course, Haplif no longer had a choice. Option 3. "She left?" Yopanek asked, frowning at the message Haplif had given him. "Just left?" "Not permanently," Haplif hastened to assure him, brushing his fingertips across the boy's head. Yopanek was surprised, confused, and unhappy, but there was no suspicion. "As you see, she's just going to spend some time at the migration and 2 or 3 of the others in the area, then connect up with us again once we return from Selwis." "But that could be months," Yopanek protested. "How can she leave when she hasn't even recovered from her poisoning?" "It won't be months before we're back," Haplif soothed. 6 weeks, 8 at the most, and the medics came by again while you were gone and checked her out. I've got their report right here, if you want to read it. Don't worry, she's fine." "I suppose," Yopanek said, still frowning, "and even on Selwis will only be a few days' journey from here," Haplif pointed out. "If she starts feeling bad or wants to leave, she can message you, and we'll send the ship back to get her while our spices are growing." "I know," Yopanek said. "It's just, leaving me behind doesn't sound like something she'd do." "How little we truly know other people," Haplif said philosophically. "Did you realize she was this interested in bird migrations, for example?" "I didn't think so. No, I think she's been looking for a way she could watch her birds while you met with Counselor Lakuviv, and this was her solution. Now both your hopes and dreams will be satisfied." He shook his head in admiration. "Very clever girl." "She is that," Yopanek said, his face clearing. "Well, if that's what she wants, I guess she's old enough to make that decision. When do we head for Selwis?" "We can leave within the hour," Haplif said, brushing the boy's head again. Some of the unhappiness lingered, but it was rapidly fading into a guarded eagerness at this sudden and unexpected opportunity to finally take the first step toward his future glory. Never mind that Haplif's story was gossamer thin. Yopanek wanted to believe it, and so he did. And of course, the sooner we leave, the sooner we can complete our business on Selwis and reunite the 2 of you. That makes sense, Yopanek said. Well, I need to get cleaned up before dinner. I'll meet you in the salon at 7, Haplif said. Oh, one more thing. She left this for you. He held out the brooch he'd given the girl. She left it? Yopanek asked, frowning as he picked it up off Haplif's palm. She said it was her promise you'd be together again, Haplif said. She said to keep it until you can pin it back on her. He smiled. Perhaps at your wedding? Absolutely at our wedding, the boy said. He gazed at the brooch another moment, then slipped it carefully into his pocket. Thank you. You're welcome, Haplif said. Now go clean up. By the time dinner is served, we'll be on our way, he smiled, to Selwys and your future. 6 hours later, when Haplif was sure Yopanek was fast asleep in his room, he had the ship leave hyperspace just long enough to release Yomi's body into the vast emptiness of the universe. He made damn sure that all the pretty pictures of her cloud journal, the fancy oh-so-clever drawings where she'd been secretly recording everything she knew about him and the Agbui, went with her.